And then let me start my AI companion. All right. And then I'm going to start the summary. All right. So welcome. It is week 3 here in ILM 220, formerly known as CIT. No, wait. Is it 220? What is it? Whatever it is. Formerly known as CIT 220, database design and administration. Tonight, we're going to talk about the queries or the types of queries you're going to see in week 3. And we're going to discuss the final project. Oh, excuse me. Matthew, were there any questions from this week? From the lessons, from the assignments, any questions that you had?
Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you. What did you say? Was it a no? Oh, okay. That's fine. Just go ahead and chat me if you have any questions as we're going along, and give me the thumbs up when I ask if you understand, or a thumbs down if you don't understand. We'll go that way. All right. All right. So let's just go ahead and jump in today's what I plan to talk about today. All right. So I don't want to start with this. I want to start with the lessons. Now, last week we went over some of these queries. We're going to do a little bit of refresh. We're going to talk about some of the same things again, and we're going to add some things to it. And we're going to make it a little more interesting here, okay? So last week we talked about select queries and how they ran. You have select title length from film where length is greater than 100. Again, when this runs in the engine, the first thing it runs is the from statement, then it runs the where statement, and then it runs the select statement. So if I run this here, it gives me my results, the name of the title of the movie, and how long it is. My where statement says anything over 100. If I take length off of here and I just say select title from film where length is greater than 100, it still works, because whatever's in the where clause just has to be in the table. It doesn't have to be in the select query. So that's why this runs second, because if it were to get rid of all the columns you didn't want, then the length column would be gone. So first, second, third, and then order by runs fourth. So again, this is just very simple. This is an inequality operator. There's greater than, there's less than. I don't know. When I was in elementary school back in the 70s, we described these as alligators. The alligator always wants to eat the bigger number. I don't know if that's what y'all did or not. Here, the alligators were kissing for the inequality. So greater than, less than or equal to, greater than equal to, equals not a inequality. It's a comparison operator. This one here, the two whatever they're called, the kissing alligators, means not equal to. Exclamation point equal is also not equal to. Generally speaking, in other engines, the exclamation point equal sign is only used for textual inequalities, not numeric inequalities. But in MySQL, it works for both. So here I've got where length is greater than 100. Over here, next one, select title, length, rental rate from film, where length is greater than 100 and rental rate is less than 5. Again, because the and is here, both have to be met. So if I run this, you'll see in my results, everything in the rental rate is less than 5. Everything in the length in the length is greater than 100. If I change this to or, and my number of results were, it's up here, 610. If I change that to an or and you would spell it right, now it can be anything, and I got 1,000 rows returned. Okay. So again, and means both criteria have to be met, or means either criteria have to be met. Another thing we talked about last week is instead of having this comparison operator, I can have like instead. So with like, I'm asking it to find things that are similar to it, which means we need to have wildcard operators. So here I've got select title from film where title like A. And what this means is that the first letter has to be an A, and I don't care what's after it. I just want everything that starts with an A. And I do that, and it shows me everything that starts with an A. If I do this, it's everything that ends with an A. I don't care what's in front of it. Okay? So if I do this, I just care that there's an A somewhere in it. Now, these are very, very broad stroke where queries, but you get the idea of what it's trying to do. It's trying to it's just saying find something that has this particular letter or phrase in it. So you could even do a phrase like and. Show me something that has and in it. I don't know if there's anything with and in it, but let's see if there is. Yeah, see, there's nothing with and, right? So that particular, I'm looking for that word and. Okay. I can also do not like, which means show me everything that isn't that. So if I run this, it'll show me everything that doesn't have those 3 letters in it, which is probably everything, 963 rows. And if I just have those filled without spaces, I have a few. So just there's and right there, right? The word and's not there, but the letters A and D are. Okay. A and D are there, not A and D are. Right? So we can take that a step further here. And I go down here and I have where title and I have like A underbar E%. So what this says is I want a word. I want you to find everything in the table in the title column that starts with an A, has a single letter after. The third letter is an A, has a single letter after. The fifth letter is an E, and I don't care what's after that. Okay, so we can get more specific. There are some cases where you would use this, but it's there to be used. So I can run this, and I think this gives me 2 results. Yeah. I can make it even simpler. I just show me everything that what do I want to do? Has the second letter as an A. Hey Bruno.
Hello.
So we're reviewing some of the stuff we talked about last week. I've got a couple new queries to show you. Then we're going to talk about what the final project is and how that works. And then I'll go to questions and then we'll call it a night. We've only been at it for about 11 minutes, okay?
Okay.
So again, I have the where clause. I underbar it, A. Just show me everything that has a second letter in A. Okay. So what this is showing you is we can get very, very granular in what we're trying to find. Very, very specific in what we're trying to find in these where queries. And as we talk about the final project, this becomes something you might use in your test cases. So these are the equality operators. Then we have our not equalities and our comparison range. Like we talked last week, I have where title not like the, and it shows me everything that doesn't have those 3 letters, anything that doesn't start with THE. I can change that to show me anything that doesn't start with AC. And you'll see that we've got here Academy, ACE. So those aren't going to be there anymore. Okay. We have where length does not equal 100. So it'll show me everything where the length is not not equal to 100. That's everything but anything that's exactly 100. We also have, grab these here real quick. So I can do this here. Let me grab these here real quick and get the other comparison operator that I didn't have here. And I talked about last week. It's called in, and this is where length in, okay. So I can take this query here, drop it down here. So now I'm gonna say, show me those things from film where length is in these three numbers. So I'm setting up an array within the query right here, right? And then when I run this, it's going to show me which ones are those three numbers. And we only had 25 that met it, right? I can also take this. We'll get that in a second, okay? I can do not in and make it the inequality comparison, non-equality comparison, and it'll show me everything that's not 86, 48, or 50. And then we talked about range comparisons already, right? Okay. Any questions to this point? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Excellent. Bruno, you good?
Yeah, I understand that where length between is equals where length sino less and more. Is the semi close or no?
What was that?
Or the semi result the two queries upper is selected title length rental rate from film where length sino uh, less and major 100 is the same result the this carry selected title from film where length between uh, 50 and 100 the
Right?
same result.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So now these are all static operators or static queries because these numbers are hard coded in there. There's no change unless you go and manually change them, right? So what we want to do sometimes is we don't want to have things hard coded. We want to have some kind of flexibility and dynamicness to them. And we can use what's called a subquery. And so here I have select title from film where length is equal to select length from film where title is Academy Dinosaur. Okay. And that is going to throw an error, and it's 86. So when I run this, it's just going to grab the length from here and use it in the comparison for here. And it's going to show me everything that just has a length of 86. And again, here's just another example of it. Select title from film where length is in. So the difference here, so here, length is equal to, and there's a single value that comes up with that. Only one value comes here. This query, we're going to get a couple of values. So I can't use equal because equal is only there when there's one value in the equality statement. Here, this is going to yield a couple of values, so we need in, right? Because this is going to give me 12 rows returned. I'm going to run this, and it's going to show me everything that matches that, and it's 95 rows. If I were to have equal here, it's going to throw an error. And it's going to say subquery returns more than one row. Now, the good thing about, remember on day 1 and day 2, I said the good thing about transact SQL is that the query language is English, and we can understand that. It makes sense, right? So the errors are also, for the most part, some of them aren't, are very simple. Subquery returns more than one row. You don't get simpler than that. It tells you exactly what's wrong, right? The last thing I want to show you, because we're on the topic of subqueries, and I don't think I talk about this anywhere else. Subqueries can literally go anywhere in a query. It can go in the select statement, it can go in the from statement, the join statement. So the inner join thing we're going to talk about next week. That's the whole lesson next week. Inner join is a command where you're joining two tables. Okay, so I wanted to do that here because I want to talk about a subquery and how that would work in this case. So I've got this query here. Select store ID, film ID, and then the count of the film ID as inventory. From inventory where store ID equals 1 and group by store ID and film ID. Because remember, this is an aggregate function. If I have an aggregate function in my query, I must have a group by that contains the columns that are not aggregated. Okay, so if I run this query on its own, it gives me these lovely results. Film ID 1 is 4, film ID 4 is 4, 3, 2, blah, 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 right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this query and I'm going to treat it like a table. I'm going to put it in the from statement. Okay, so I'm going to say select from this query, and I'm going to call it as, I'm going to refer to it as A. I'm going to alias it as A. Remember here, I alias this as INV. I'm going to alias this as A. And I'm going to inner join film. So I'm going to join this query to the table film, and I'm going to call it F. And this, whenever I use a join query, I have to give it a column in which to join. And then I can run this, and it'll give me results. Now, if you do not understand this query, that is totally fine. This is next week stuff. Okay, this is reading Nephi, 3rd Nephi before you're reading Mosiah. You're ahead of the game here, right? So I just wanted to show you and plant the seed in your brain that subqueries that we use here in the where statements can be used in the from statements as well. And it shows here to do it because we were talking about that at this particular moment in time. Okay, so that is the queries that I had to talk about tonight. Are there any questions on the, I mean, all of these we talked about last week. This is the only really new thing we talked about tonight. Is there any questions on this? Because all the queries, all the exercises this week are about these types of queries. Give me the thumbs up if you're good.
I have 2 questions.
What, Bruno?
I don't have the question.
You don't have any questions? Okay, cool. All
No
right,
question.
so what I want to talk about for the rest of our time together is what the final project is. And let me pull up the final project. Okay. So when you're looking through your week 3 in your syllabus, you're going to see this called week 3 final options. And we put it in week 3, even though it's not due until week 13. It's due 10 weeks from today is when this is due. The reason we put it here is because it takes about 10 weeks to do this if you want to do it right. Okay? You want to do it well. So the purpose of this final option, the final project, this is where you get to design a database from scratch. You get to pick a topic that you enjoy working on and build a database around it. You've got to imagine an application that will use it, because you can't just build a database for the sake of building a database. It's got to be used by something, right? So the first thing you got to do if you're going to do the final project is kind of think of an application that you'd like to build, something you can think that you can see into the world and say, I could really see this being used, right? In the past, I've had students, I think I've told you guys, I've had students design applications and databases for food storage to keep track of what's there. I've had people do databases to keep track of their kids' schedules. I've had people do databases to do kind of an application that tells you what parks are near you and what's in them and stuff like that, and how many times you've been to them and reviews and stuff. So anything that you can think of, like a book collecting application, something like that, anything in the database that you feel would work for you and you'd enjoy to find something you enjoy. If there's something you collect, or if there's a business you already work in or something like that. I've had a number of students have family members who run businesses and they built databases for that business. So that's totally fine. That completely works. So all of this is what is all this you need to read to design the database. Now, this is what they tell you to deliver. This is not what I want from you. I'm going to tell you what this is. It's going to be in the notes of this assignment. What I'm asking for is much easier than this, okay? And we're going to go through each one thing I'm looking for and what we're talking about here. Notepad, there we go. Okay. So the first thing I need is an ERD of your database. Not the MWB file. The MWB file is the actual database. If you send me that, I can't do anything with it. I can't look at it. I can't open it. It's dead in the water because the version of MySQL I use may not be the same as yours. You guys are on whatever one you're on. I forget what it is, but the most recent one, I'm on a beta test of the next version. Okay, so anything you send me, I can't open. And all I need is the ERD. And I showed you guys last week that an ERD is this. If you go here into File, and you go here into New Model, you're going to get this screen here, and you're going to add a diagram. Okay. So when you, and we're going to design, next week, we're going to design a database together, but this week I'm just going to show you through it here, right? So when you got this here, you can go here and create tables. Okay. And give them names and columns and whatnot, right? And then this starts to become your ERD. And what an ERD looks like when it's done, like I showed you the other day, is I'm going to open a model. I'll open up my NASA model. Save. That's what an ERD looks like. It is a graphic representation of the tables and how they're connected, with the columns in them, the data types in them, and their joint, their keys, foreign keys, primary keys, and whatnot. Okay, so this is the first thing you just correlated queries. Okay, I don't use them at all. I've been doing this 22 years, and what they call correlated queries is a definition in the book we don't use. It's one of the things I keep, there's a lot of, so in this class, sorry to jump back to that, but in this class, we're going to talk about a lot of things that are book learned and not world learned, right? And correlated queries is one of them. Next week, when we talk about joins, we're going to talk about something about cross joins and natural joins, and we don't ever use those in the real world because they don't do what you want them to do. So correlated queries are on your quiz. Just find the answer it, and just never worry about it. It's like using the CLI. The majority of people in the world don't use the CLI for their coding. They just use the workbench. Okay. Thank you for that question. Okay, so back to here. So the first thing you need to give me is an ERD. The second thing I need from you is the code to build the database. I don't expect you to write it. I mean, if you want to play around trying to figure it out on your own, that's totally cool. But when you're in your workbench here and you design, the reason why we design the thing here is we can go here to database and we can go to forward engineer. And what this does is it generates the code for us. So here's all the code you need to build that database. And all you gotta do is copy to the clipboard and save it to a file and send that to me. And then when you are doing this for real, and what you're doing, this doesn't build the database in your engine, you take this and then you copy it to the clipboard and then you bring it over back to here. Make sure this database isn't here right now. Yeah. And I'll paste this here and I run it. And if I refresh over here, oh, I have it called MyDB and it's right there. Right. So it created all this stuff and I go under MyDB and there's all my tables that were over here in my model. Okay. So that's the second thing you need. The third thing you need, and I'm going to put them in the order that you should do them, as opposed to the order that I normally do. So you've made your ERD, you've generated the code. The next thing you need to do is design. The database, I should mention this, should have 7 to 10 tables. I find that to be a good number. It's a very odd thing with database that I've found that if you can go from 7 to 10, but you go from 10 to 20 very, very quickly. Because it's just the way the nature of the database is. Because once you start getting a roll and creating tables and getting the relationship between the tables, it's very easy to knock out a bunch of tables. And you'll find yourself still looking at 25 tables, and that's a lot of tables for what we're trying to do. So keep your table count between 7 and 10. That's a manageable amount for what you need to do following that. Okay. Design test cases for the database. And what a test case is a query run against the database that an end user would use to extract data they need. So I'll go back over here to my NASA model here. So I've got astronauts, I've got location, launch of the location, I've got astronauts who are on the mission, I've got missions, I've got the class of the spacecraft, what spacecraft was on the mission, the destination of the mission, and the location. So I've got all these tables here, right? So I've got this front-end application that tracks launches. I live in Orlando, Florida. I can see the coast from here. I see rockets go up 3 or 4 times a week. They're constantly launching things off the Cape. I can see them. So it's what you get for living in a land that's completely flat, right? So I have this database, and if someone was using this database to get information, what would they want to get out of it? So, for example, I would not want to know, I could ask the question, which astronaut has flown on the most missions? And that information is here. I can write that query, okay? I can ask the question, how many rockets have launched from Grapevine, Texas? And I can find that. I can say, how many rockets that launched from San Diego, California had this specific astronaut and went to the space station? And I can find that information. Are you kind of seeing how you'd ask the questions of these databases to get the information out? The kind of the mindset of how you pull the information, what the user would want? Yeah or nay? Excellent. Okay. So that's what you need. The next thing you need to do after you design the ERD and you've got your tables is say, okay, how are we getting the data out? What are people going to want to see with it? Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4, I need CRUD statements to populate the database. Okay. What that means is, and we're going to get to those insert, update, and delete statements later on in the semester. The way I grade this assignment, okay, is I look at the ERD and I'm like, okay, this is good, this is good, this could be different. And I grade this to see what level of normalization you're at, how the data flows, it does make sense. Then I take the code that you generated and I run it against my database so I can have that database there. Then I take the insert statements that you did, the CRUD statements to populate the database, and I run that. So I now have your database with data in it. And then I run your test cases. So the data you put into the database has to be enough data to give results for all of your test cases. Okay. So if I want to know astronauts, missions, and destination, I'd have to have entries into astronauts, missions, and destinations. So you're probably looking at roughly 5 to 6 rows per table. Okay, not a ton. And you want to make sure that the data you put in there will actually yield the results from your queries. Okay. The next thing I need from you, the fifth thing, and this is, I'm going to call this extra credit. I want a mock-up of the front end of the data of the application and how it relates to the database. This is essentially the reverse of what you did for the reverse engineering for the thing from last week. I want you to kind of draw. I don't care if you do it in crayon. I don't care if you do it in paint. MS Paint, not like actual paint. No, don't Bob Ross it, but like in MS Paint, or do it in any kind of drawing program or whatever. You can do like, color, like you can cut it out. I don't care, but I just need you to show me what a front end would look like and how each component on that front end would tie into a database component. Okay. Like if you had a big results, like a big results pane in the application, this is where this query would go, right? If you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's extra credit. It's not required for the assignments. The last thing I need, and this is required, I either need a PowerPoint or a 2 to 4 minute video presenting your project. Okay, that's what I need. I need you to, because in all honesty, if this was an in-person class and we were all in a room together, hopefully it'd be
The
more than
6 point,
what's that?
the 6 point is required
This-
or the extra credit.
This is what's required for the final project,
Okay.
not the final exam. If you choose to do the final project, this is what's required to do. Okay. I'm leaning in because I don't have headphones for this computer right now. So I've got to listen to the speaker that's in the back of the computer. I wonder if I could do this. I could be smarter. I'm going to do that next time. Run it through my phone so I can hear better. Okay. So yeah, so those are the 6 things I need for the final project. And that's it. No more, no less. If you look over to the page over here, what it's asking for, it's not quite the same. It's sort of the same, but it's not. It wants 12 tables. It wants to do all these CRUD statements. That doesn't explain a lot. It does this whole thing with the mock-up, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I want. And if you don't want to do a PowerPoint and you want to just do a video, I'm totally fine with that. So these are the 6 things that I need for your project. The final project is optional. You do not have to do it. You can either do the final project or the final exam. It's your choice. You don't need to do both. So don't stress about that. One or the other. Most people, it depends on what you want out of the class. If you want to just, churn through it and pass the class and get just to do the book learning part about it, then more power to you. I'm happy to help you take the final exam and you're on the way. The final exam again, the final exam is 180 questions. You've got 3 hours to take the test, I think. It's open book, open notes, and you get 2 chances. So it's all the questions that were on your previous quizzes. So it's not a huge leap. And that is to be completed when you get to the end of the course. The final project, start it now. You have 10 weeks to complete it. That's more than enough time. The fastest I've ever seen it done is 3 weeks. But that person didn't do a whole lot for that 3 weeks other than the final project. If you choose to do the final project, when you look at your weekly modules, you have this little thing called the paper. For example, this week's paper is a 3 to 5 page paragraph report that explains what you learn with various comparison operators with the where clause. The paper should qualify what you learned by experimenting with technology. If you do the final project, your papers become, here's what I did to work on my final project this week. I looked into it. I decided I'm going to do a database that is on food storage. I looked and was going to do a database that is on my baseball card collection. I'm going to do a database that is based on a car rental agency I want to do. Any number of things. Okay. So that's important to know that if you're going to do the final project, the weekly papers become about the project, not the case studies, which means they become a lot easier. If you choose to do the final project now and you hit week 11 and you realize you haven't done it and you haven't had the time and need to go back to the final exam, that is totally fine. If you spent 11 weeks writing papers for me about the project you were doing and then you change your mind at the last minute, that's totally fine. When you write your paper with what you're doing, I'll reply about what I think about it. You don't need to get my approval on the topic. Just tell me what you're going to do. If I think it's not quite up to speed, I'll let you know, maybe make some suggestions on the direction to take it. But this is entirely up to you. If you do the final project, I am a resource for you in this. I am going to guide you through this. Show me your ERD. I will walk you through it. We can have one-on-one meetings. You can show it on Wednesday night meetings. You can just you can pop it into you can put the picture of the ERD in your weekly paper and point something out to me, and I'll give you some notes on it. A lot of times, if I do that, I'm going to do a quick video presentation for like a quick video message for you, so I can point out stuff and say, "Here, do this. This is not right." Blah 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 blah. Right, stuff like that. But that is the final project. The final project is a lot of fun. It is not as stressful as you think it is right now, because I promise you that by week 5, you will have all the week 6. By week 6, you will have all the code knowledge you need to write the code that you need to write. And starting next week, I will weeks 4, 5, 6, and maybe 7, depending on how it goes. I will do a final project with you guys. I will create the database. I'll create the relationships. I'll go ahead and write the test cases. So I'm going to do one with you while in our meetings here, so you can get the idea of how to do it. So I'll model it as we go along to help you guys out. So yeah, so that is that. Are there any questions on the final exam? I mean, the final project. All right. It is quarter after, so we're running about 15 minutes early. I usually do this for any questions. There's only 2 of you all tonight. So do you have any questions on anything we've talked about tonight? Anything coming up in the near future? Or anything from last week? If not, we'll call it a night. And then next week we'll meet. We'll talk about inner joins. We'll talk about, we'll start designing an ERD. I'll tell you my idea, and then I'll walk through the building of the tables with you. I'll probably spend a good 10 minutes talking about data types because I love talking about data types. It's a lot of fun. And if not, if there's nothing, then I will in the chat here. Okay, Matthew, you good? Bruno, I'm assuming you're good. So if there's nothing else, we'll meet next week.
For me, it's okay. I
Okay,
understand.
you good, Bruno?
Yeah, I
Okay.
will choose the
What's that?
option. I will choose the final project. I
Excellent.
think.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. I look forward to working with you on it. Okay, you have a good night, Bruno.
Okay, good night.
Good night.